Hey guys, it's Marine here. I was kind of asked to do a replay review for a buddy of mine in MIT. He was having some issues with the M6, so I figured this would be a good time as any to just look at the armor and then just go over the replays that he's provided. Now, as you can see, as we're moving up, the lower front, from front on, is actually not too bad. It's 100. At the lower half, it's up to 185, which at tier 6 is pretty good. However, as you get right to the middle, it drops significantly to about 104. And as you continue up, the whole middle portion of the front plate of the M6 is actually pretty bad, so I would want to hide that. Moving on up, here you have some pretty good armor, and then you have this band right here along the tank, which is pretty weak as well. Then you get up into the top of the tank where you have the mantle. Now at the bottom of the mantle you have okay armor for tier 6 at 167, but it gets into the 120s, mid 110s, teens. And then you got the top of the tank, which if it hits the very top portion of the mantle, it will ricochet. The top of the tank is actually pretty weak. As you can see, looking down on it, it is only 25 millimeters thick, meaning a 76 millimeter gun will overmatch this and auto pen. And so that's something you need to be mindful of. And so what you're seeing right here is basically this tank is pretty squishy. If you try to side scrape, they're just going to shoot you right here. You're out of luck. If they shoot anywhere else, they're going to bounce, but honestly, they're just going to aim for a flat portion of your tank. And even the angling here, still not that great, and you're just going to get auto pen through your front drive wheel. And so what I'm seeing here in Watt Tank Inspector is the armor profile of this tank is pretty bad. So you cannot rely on your armor, even though you're a gigantic tank. Now let's look at the depression. Let's take this over to the side. And as you can see, it actually has pretty good depression. That means that you can peek and poke over hills or other terrain features pretty well. It also uses the American 90mm, which is a phenomenal gun with 160 base penetration and over 240 penetration with its APCR. So its gun is pretty daggone good. Once we get into the replay, which I haven't seen yet, we'll be able to do a little bit more distinction. So just looking at the armor profile of this tank, it's not something that you need to brawl with. It is something that you need to play at a distance where you can use probably your DPM. Let's see, you can fire 8.23 rounds a minute without a rammer, so it has pretty good DPM. However, it's just the armor profile of this tank is pretty bad. And so again, you just need to hide this tank as much as you can, use standoff and use your DPM, much like you would play a T20 if you ever get around to playing that tank. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into the replay and see what happens. Alrighty, now here we are in battle. As you can see, he's a top tier in his heavy tank, in the M6 again, and he is moving along. Let's go and blow up that mini-map real quick. He's going to move along to a little bit of the heavy brawling area. Now looking at the enemy team, they have a KV-1S, a T-150, and a TOG for their T6s. Nothing you need to worry about. However, most of the tanks, tier 5 and above, will have absolutely no issues penetrating his armor. And so if I were him, what I would be thinking going into the situation is that I need to be close enough to support, but I cannot let my tank be the center of attention. The armor is just not reliable enough. I need to use my DPM and my depression to make things work. Now there are 3 already on the enemy team as well. And so if I were him, I'd be looking at possibly getting up right about there or playing the backside of this hill just initially to try and avoid artillery. Again, just don't want to be a focus because look how big this tank is, look how flat it is. As you saw in Tank Inspector, its armor is just abysmal. And so you can see he is moving into that location where I would have deployed this tank. Again, he's using his depression. Now, one thing he could have done there differently is kept his gun pointed to the south, but used the right mouse button to just glance over that tank and check its location. Now he is being a little aggressive here, moving up to get another poke, which is probably the right move. No one has shown up. Right here, he should have noticed on his mini-map that two tanks appeared. They are the T-150 and the KV-1S. I would snapshot this as quickly as possible. I would not have bothered aiming and not have backed down immediately back down to this area. And as you can see, he's already starting to take damage. He was a little too slow to respond to the mini-map there. If he'd been a little bit faster, maybe he wouldn't be down, just very, very quickly. That poke right there was absolutely well, he paid for that. He was way too aggressive, and he should not have poked up like that. He should have seen all the enemy in front of him and immediately backed down. That's on him right there, this move. He just made a bad move. We're going to go ahead and go to another replay. Alright guys, it's another replay here. It's a little bit better game than his previous one is. Right now you can see that he is on the new skin of Prokhorovka called Fiery Salient. The map plays pretty much the same. Now what he is going to do is, you may have missed the chat at the beginning of the game, he's going to go down to the 0 line and support the hill, which I feel is probably the right move, although he probably could actually play the middle really well in this tank. As you can see, there is no artillery, which he points out here, and there's just a lot of TDs. You can go hold down really well down there. There's going up the hill, you're going to expose your sides a little bit, and you're going to be really open for pretty much anything which can shoot up there. But we'll see how this decision works out for him. I believe in the comments that he does make a couple mistakes up here on the hill, which probably cost him a lot more health than what this should have, so let's just see how that develops. On the M6 I've personally never played. I'm personally not interested in playing it. It's a tier 6 and I can't stand tier 6. But let's just see how this develops. I still believe my opinions on where the positions I should take and everything else I've mentioned about this tank pretty much hold true. If I were him, I would have stopped right here and not pushed up as much as he is. And so he's going to get shots on this M6 right here, who got lit up by everything and is very quickly dead. So again, he's pushing way too far forward for this tank. There's just so little margin for error when it comes to getting spotted with this tank. That's a nice snapshot. And a very good kill. Now he's focusing on the Coven when he may have shots if he pokes up a little bit more on this AMX-40. The MX-40 is a pretty hard target for a lot of tanks to penetrate due to its stupid armor. So again, he's poking up.
Enemy armor is destroyed.
And another good kill. So again, I think he's being a little bit too aggressive. I think he's not letting the game develop as much as he should. Just because only one tank is spotted here doesn't mean that at low tiers there's not 1,000 tanks hidden over on the back end. They got greedy there, poked over, and as you can see, he's absolutely getting reamed from over there. A lot of tanks like to camp over at the B6 A6 location at the railroad tracks, and he just got absolutely murdered for that. So again, way too aggressive with that poke. He should have let the game develop. The impressions I'm getting from the M6 is that it is more of a support tank. It is not a tank which you should be pushing whatsoever. So another risky poke here. I think he's a little greedy. Not exactly sure what he's shooting at there. Oh, there's a Hetzer. Could use a snapshot. Now because he's lost so much health, he's being really tentative here. If I were him, I would have continued to back down off the hill and probably pushed over more towards the middle. I just feel the hill is much too weak a location for a tank this large and with this little armor. Not so much with the higher tier battles, but especially with these low tier battles, you really just need to assume that everyone is camping at the B6 area and on that worthless island. And so any tanks which poke over there on the other side of the hill are just going to get lit up. As you get up higher in tiers, usually there will only be one, maybe two tanks back there, and it's pretty easy to move across. However, there will still be a lot of tanks over at the B6 area, so you need to be mindful of that. Once you push over that hill, you need to push hard. Now because he lost so much health as well, and because he's been so tentative, his gun has been out of the fight now for probably close to 3 minutes, which is not very good for his team. He has one of the better guns on his team. He is now down 3 tanks, and he just cannot be the one to push the pace, to use his DPM, to use his gun in much of the fight. And honestly, where he's positioned at, his tank is well over these bushes. If anyone pokes, he's going to be spotted. And as you can see now, at the B6A6, got a Nashorn, Hetzer, and an M10. Not exactly sure what he's shooting at there. Maybe in the in-game reticle had a little bit more. Now, unfortunately for him, the SU-85 over there is a pretty poor player who is not going to push up to help get him vision. Now he needs to be careful right here. The Nashorn will have shots, the SU-100 will have shots, and obviously the T-150 will have shots. One thing that I would be critical of as well is he's not moving backwards after he takes a shot. When you shoot, you blow some of your camo rating. And so after you shoot, and especially in a tank with very low armor values, you need to shoot, back up, and either reposition or wait for yourself to stealth. You need to assume that every time you fire, you are spotted. Good snapshot there. So again here, he's assuming the best instead of assuming the worst. Now he is using this tank right here to hide his side, which is a good move. However, at this point, he needs to actually be looking at getting over here and getting some more spots over this way. He's depending on his teammates to move up and get shots, whereas he needs to be a little bit more over here to get a little bit different. For example, if a tank were here at this rock, using this far side of it, he may not have as good shots, but if he were over here, especially in this dip right here, using the hold down cover, he would have a very different angle and have a lot better shots. So that's one thing that he needs to do a little bit better of, is being mindful of the locations that you should take your tank and the positions that you can use, and the times when you should redeploy. So again, he should be assuming that he is able to be seen. Now, understandably, the enemy team probably has a much other problems on their hands. And that was, frankly, some very poor aiming here. Tank should have been dead another shot earlier. And now he's going to need to rely on his KV-1S buddy to try and get vision for him. Now in that situation as well, I probably would have shifted my focus to the SU-100. It is a much more dangerous tank, whereas the KV-3 the T-150 had a stock gun, I believe, and so he was the least of the threats, whereas the SU-100 is a tier 6 tank, and I believe it has the Russian 122mm gun, and so getting that tank out would have been ideal. Probably could have waited a little bit longer for that to settle. But as you can see, he's now on the top gun with 2,646 damage. Now the Stug has yet to be spotted. And so what that tells me, he's either camping the one line or is on the island. And his bot friend in the SU-85 has decided to start moving. And we're down to 2 minutes 30 seconds. And his bot buddy is not going to be any kind of help here in the situation. It would be very nice if Steven had 6 cents on his tank. Now, because he hasn't been shot yet, we're going to assume now that the Stug is on the island. Not sure what's going on. The Stug may just let him cap out. I'm gonna go ahead and speed it up a little bit. And it looks like the Stug's gonna let him win. Yep, the Stug let him win. Now, a couple different tendencies I've noticed with both of these replays is that he feels much too compelled to make the early aggressive move with this tank, and you absolutely cannot do that. The armor does not hold up. You are a very large target. You're very easy to penetrate. You need to let your puppies do a little bit more work for you and try to be into an early position where you can soak up the damage from their moving. Now, for example, with this game, if Steven had been in the mid, and he would have had shots on the tank which is on the backside of the hill, which would then allowed his team to potentially dominate that area. Again, there was no arty, so he could have done that. And he has a tendency to tunnel vision a little bit with available targets. Very understandable. He's also a little slow here in this last battle to redeploy. As he gains a little bit more experience, I'm sure he'll do a little bit better. But anyway, this is my replay review. I hope that you guys get something from it.